This is where right and left come to try to be reasonable. Now, that is a far cry from our politics, which is now a full-blown battle of the fringes. I'm calling it MAGA versus MEGA. What is MEGA? I'll explain. But the headline is the Democrats won a lot of key races, right? Last night, Democrats won in New York City, New Jersey, Virginia, California, and a lot of other states. The real question, though, for me, is not who won, but what won. MAGA seems to have a mirror image. The pendulum has swung. MAGA is in power. MAGA must own a disappointing status quo. So the outrage always comes from the outside. That's now the left. And it's bigger, it's angrier, and it's deeper than we saw with MAGA. And I argue to you, just as unlikely to make changes that are better for the majority of us. New York City was a metaphor for this movement. And the mirror image mascot to Trump won, beating my brother Andrew and Curtis the Spoiler Sliwa last night handily and unsurprisingly, if only because we've seen this before. The grievance is real. The people in New York City and around this country who are demanding change are no more deplorable than MAGA ever was. Affordability is the rallying cry, but it does not mean simply the economy. It is code. It means break the system. It is time to take from the top so the rest can have a better life. Now, to some ears, that means socialism killing capitalism. To others, it just sounds fair. Now, both MAGA and MEGA, a bigger version of it, chose unconventional mascots, outsiders with more personality than political pedigree who could promise everything because they had a record of nothing to judge the promises against. And both spout extreme and divisive things to blame what is actually wrong, they're right about that, on common enemies of the other side and the system, demanding big changes that likely won't happen. Sounds familiar, right? It's not about reasonable answers anymore than it was with MAGA. But MEGA is the bigger version, bigger attacks on the system. Forget about just tax cuts. They want to change the democracy. Socialism, not capitalism. Forget about a border wall and more enforcement. They want to defund the police and decriminalize a lot of violent actions. MAGA plays to white fright. MEGA plays to free Palestine. And it seems like the fringes of both sides now are against the Jews, okay? And with MEGA, you're punishing the ruling class. Both are right about what feels wrong about the economic realities in America. And both are more about the anger than they are about the answers. MAGA and MEGA are about the anger, not the answers. Okay? Don't take it from me. Take it from His Honor.
A great New Yorker once said that while you campaign in poetry, you govern in prose. If that must be true, let the prose we write still rhyme, and let us build a shining city for all.
Okay, look, there was a lot of anger in the speech because the anger is what got him there, okay? The question is, who is they, right? And whose time is it no longer, and what will that look like? Now, that was a reference in there, which was a very weird mix. He just paraphrased Mario Cuomo and Ronald Reagan. I don't know if he knows that. I think he did because he was trying to be petty. But my father's line, again, I don't think it was an accident. I don't care what you think you know about the left, okay? This guy, AOC, Bernie, compared to my father, these are posers when it comes to being true democratic values, all right? My father was a doer and a fighter and a fixer. He loved America. He believed that he would never have become anything like he was able to become here. And he believed, and a big part of that was capitalism, and that diversity was our strength. And anyone looking to divide needed to be dealt with, okay? He was stronger than all of them combined, but sweeter as well. These are mean people. And that's why half the city came out against them. But they are right about what is wrong when it comes to affordability. The question is, do they want to make things right or worse? Three big points. MAGA and MEGA are following playbooks. Project 2025, you can say, oh, that's a boogeyman. No, it isn't. The choices are all over the Trump administration, and many of their missteps come from that kind of manifesto. MEGA, same thing. You see the Free Press? Came across an internal Democratic Socialist of America document saying that they see Zohran Mamdani's win, now, you know, the mayor-elect of New York City, as a sign that they're going to take over the Democratic Party over the next decade. They plan on surging their membership, like they did with foreign-born ethnics in outer boroughs, and running socialist candidates at the federal, state, and local level in Democratic primaries. Single Palestinian state replacing Israel. You okay with that? The abolition of the police and the U.S. empire. What does that even mean? The return of land to Native Americans and the right of all people to freedom of movement, meaning no borders, okay? Now, who did this appeal to? Newcomers, okay? 38% of people actually born in New York voted for Mamdani. 49% voted for my brother and for Sliwa. 85% of voters who lived here less than 5 years voted for Mamdani. 14% voted for Andrew, okay? The grievance is real, but you go look at who it is, and you will come to the decision, this is not about the many. It is about the few coming together, and now they become a majority, all right? And it is an unlikely coalition of foreign-born and disenfranchised with young members of the privileged classes who resent their privilege and their limited economic opportunities as they see it. Is that why the socialists picked a young guy who parrots the poison of the Free Palestine crew? Because it's in their playbook. Talk like this.
We have to make clear that when the boot of the NYPD is on your neck, it's been laced by the IDF.
Like, does that just make you uncomfortable? Like the phrase globalized intifada, from the river to the sea?
I know people for whom those things mean very different things. The very word has been used by the Holocaust Museum when translating the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising.
All right, look, Democrats have to make a choice. You know, you can sit there like that guy and just kind of maw through this nonsense talk, or they're going to have to figure out if they want to take a stand. But it's not easy to take a stand against a populist movement, okay? I believe that this guy in New York City is the same as Trump was. And both of them are putting out a signal. And the signal was, a lot of what I'm saying is kind of close to the line of unacceptable or ugly, but both of them wound up giving a suggestion that it was open season on minorities you don't like, whether they said it specifically or not. Literally today, swastikas were spray painted on a Jewish school in Brooklyn, okay? Now, do I see this as the work of Team Mamdani? No, but it doesn't have to be. Mamdani is not a Nazi, but is it a surprise that those who hate Jews feel they can now show it more easily? Same thing happened to minorities after MAGA, remember? Remember all the Asians getting beat up all of a sudden? Third point, the right is stuck. They have MAGA or nothing, okay? They got to dance with who brung them. The Democrats do have a choice. They won last night by doing a lot more than making people angry in New York City. 2 white women, first governor in Virginia, female, second in New Jersey, do not believe in socialism. They do not believe in using the word socialism. And they are not open to the idea of erasing Israel. Both were in Congress. Both are not talkers like Bernie or AOC. They're known as doers, who are known for collaboration. One was in the military, the other was in the CIA. They are about working from within. And they won by bigger margins than what we saw in New York City. Why? The majority in this country does not believe in extreme ideas and destroying the system. Now, I haven't mentioned Trump. Why? Because I don't think this was as simple as Trump bad. It's about more. It's deeper than that. But MAGA better realize they can no longer call facts fake news and expect the angry to acquiesce. Prices are not down. Tariffs and ICE takedowns were not a magic pill. Trump claimed today that gas prices are at a 20-year low thanks to him, and that he can expect them to go to $2 a gallon. He might as well have said 2 cents. Gas prices are at the same place they were last year on average. BS like this is fuel for the mega fury that may be coming for MAGA in the midterms, unless these do-good Democrats like Spanberger and Sherrill can outshine this outrage machine and connect to the majority. Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.